Yes, Hootsuite. It's social media marketing, Adam. So we're a social media marketing company. I'm really delighted to have the chance to come here. I've never presented at a CAMDEA event before. So I'm going to tell you, I thought it'd be interesting. We've been doing machine learning type projects in Hootsuite for about 4 years. And we're moving into a new phase of machine learning. We've completed our first phase, and I thought we have some interesting stuff to share with some people. So let me talk about it. So I want to go through a bit of the background about how we created our Hootsuite machine learning team, what we did, our architecture, factors that we take into account when we're doing machine learning in Hootsuite. I'm going to go through an example, so show a bit of an architecture diagram of one of our features that we have in machine learning, which can then be extrapolated to other features, and then talk a little bit about what happens next. So it's not a very long presentation, probably be about 10 minutes or so. So first of all, who's this presentation aimed at? We started in Hootsuite from zero. We had nothing in machine learning a few years ago. And so we had a really good experience with it. We didn't know whether we were going to be able to do anything. We didn't really know what machine learning was. We didn't really know what we were going to use machine learning for in our product. But we had a great experience with it. So I think it's for anybody who's in a software, probably a SaaS company who's heard about it or wants to get started and wants to know how cheaply you can actually do machine learning in your product. So first of all, a little bit about myself. I'm a director of software in Hootsuite. I've been in Hootsuite for 3 years. I run the product infrastructure team. So that's the team that's responsible for building software, all the self-service stuff when you sign up for Hootsuite, all that software, the channel integration software. So that's the layer of software that connects to social networks. Hootsuite is big into connecting to social networks. So I'm responsible for that area. The identity team, which is all about the login and the user and the team and the org and all those sort of structures and those admin areas, and the machine learning team. So when I came in, I inherited a machine learning team, and I'm super proud to have been involved with them ever since. Hootsuite itself, Adam seems to imply that you all know what Hootsuite is, but I better explain it just in case. So Hootsuite was created about 13 years ago in Vancouver. So I'm in Vancouver, Hootsuite's in Vancouver. We started out as a simple SaaS business with a web application to help schedule posts to Twitter. So that was the first thing. But now we've grown to be used by top companies around the world to publish content to some of the biggest social media accounts out there, efficiently engaging with tens of thousands of social media users every day and analyzing terabytes of social media data. Our stack is, we originally started off with a dashboard monolith, which was PHP. And then we've broken that down into microservices now. So we have a microservices-based architecture written in a few languages, Scala, Go, Golang. And we recently acquired a company called Spark Central in Belgium. And they have a Java microservices stack. So we have Java now, Java, Golang, and Scala is our main microservices stack. And so, oh yes, in the previous slide, this is where I say, if you want to apply for jobs in Hootsuite, you're very welcome to. We're not actually hiring any machine learning people right now, strangely enough. So if you're interested in a job that's not machine learning, we'd be very interested in hearing from you. And maybe in the future, we'll open a few machine learning positions as well. So machine learning team. So we started, as I say, we started from nothing, and we needed to decide how are we going to do that. There was nobody in the team who knew anything. So we were thinking of different options. We were thinking, hey, will we hire a bunch of machine learning people to work on, like, seed the different teams with machine learning and have machine learning on one feature, machine learning on another feature? Or should we create a core platform, a bunch of machine learning experts, and evangelize that throughout the product? And we chose the second route, which I think was a very good choice to make. And what we did was we just hired one or two really good data scientists and a really, really amazing data science type product manager, and created a very small team, and actually one other coder who was interested in machine learning but was able to do software development type coding. And we were able to then have all the skills. So we had the feature designing, the data science for machine learning, and then the coder who could get it into the product. But then that wasn't all of our challenge. The next challenge was, how do we actually decide what features we want to do machine learning in Hootsuite? So we ended up having to do a kind of a training exercise, and we created a training material, like presentation, a bit like this. And we went to all the teams. So we went around having meetings with all the teams saying, what's machine learning? How can we use it with your features? We talked to developers and we talked to product managers. And then we sat down with them and went through all the features in Hootsuite, trying to work out what we could use for machine learning. And I got to say, at the start, it was pretty slow. So for a while, it was really hard to explain how we could use machine learning. But eventually, we got some interest, and we managed to do a proof of concept, and then we managed to do a feature in production. And it was probably after the first feature went into production that people started getting interested in it in more, and then a few more. And now actually it's completely the opposite. Now we have like long lists of requests for machine learning type features to go into the product. So we have more features than we have people to do the work. So it's completely the opposite to the way it was at the start. So I want to talk about a few of the considerations that we need to take. So Hootsuite, what we do is we connect to social networks. Pretty much everything that we do in Hootsuite is connecting to either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, API, posting messages, posting posts, or reading their wall or their streams, getting information and showing it. So everything, the data is really mostly owned by the social networks, and that's a huge thing to take into consideration. So I guess I'll go through this. The first thing that we had to take into account was compliance. So I guess everybody here knows about GDPR compliance and the requirements that you have to be able to delete all the data from a person's account or for a person that you're holding for them. There's privacy, so all the PII issues that we need to take into account. We train everybody in Hootsuite about PII. Everybody gets that when they come in the door. So we make sure that we're not storing any PII information. A few twists were social network considerations. So as I said, everything goes through social network APIs, and they all have rules about how much of their data, because they regard all the data that goes up as owned by the social networks. Anything you post on Facebook is owned by Facebook, and so on. So if we need to store anything for doing machine learning on it, there's very strict rules and contracts that we need to agree with them as to how long we can store it. And it's normally for a number of days. So X number of days we can store the data, and then we need to throw it away. There's absolutely no question of us keeping any social network data for any length of time at all. And another really kind of interesting one was you're not allowed to use machine learning across social networks. So for example, if somebody's using Facebook and Twitter and they're posting on both of those, we're not allowed to draw inferences on what they post on Twitter, or their hashtags that they're using on Twitter, or their tags or anything like that, and say, hey, we noticed that you're doing something on Twitter. Why don't you consider doing the same thing on Facebook? You absolutely can't do that. Or you can't bring the two things together and make any sort of conclusions or recommendations at all. There's no cross-fertilization allowed. And that's a very strict anti-competitive thing that you need to take into account when you're designing features on social networks. So with that into account, what we did was we created a kind of a basic CICD framework for doing the machine learning. And all our stuff is on Amazon. So we use SageMaker as our engine of choice for doing our machine learning. And we created, and also, of course, we're a SaaS product. So everything that we have is, we have a continuous integration and deployment pipeline. Actually, a side point, one of the interesting things that when you join Hootsuite is we see how quickly you can push something to production. And I know that having worked in other companies and gone through the whole thing where you're developing a feature and you build it somewhere, and then you do all the manual testing and integration testing and everything, and you might take a few weeks before something goes to production, and everything goes to production at the same time. But Hootsuite is very, I think, state of the art, or very advanced from anything that I've seen, where anybody, you can basically do a pull request on GitHub. It can be approved. It can go in and it can be tested automatically, and then it can go into production. And you can deliver. Anybody can deliver at any time changes to production. So it's fantastic like that. So that was a side point. Anyway, we use SageMaker. So we built a continuous integration pipeline where we store data in S3 buckets. We process the data. We send it to SageMaker. We run an algorithm on it using an algorithm that we've put into Jupyter Notebook. SageMaker will create a model artifact, and then we will serve that out to production, so that production front-end features can call those services and use the model artifacts for recommendations. So that's a kind of a very basic, I'm sure this is nothing new to anybody, but it's a very basic CI/CD pipeline that we have that we're now able to use for multiple features. And I'm just going to show you now how we use this for one of our features that we added, that we have in the product right now. So the worked example is the Hootsuite saved replies feature. So normally here, what people would do is they would do a demo of the saved replies feature. I'm not going to do that because in my experience, whenever I demo something, it doesn't work. So what I am going to do is just jump to the documentation on saved replies. We have an inbox in our product. This is an inbox where messages can come in and you can reply to messages. It's for support teams. So support teams, customers are sending messages to support teams, direct messages for customers. The support teams can reply to those messages. So that's our inbox. And big support teams are replying to things all the time. And one of the ways of saving time for them is to have saved replies, or templates. Basically, they have a bunch of replies that are in templates, and they can pick the reply and they don't have to type it out each time. So what we thought was be a fantastic thing to do would be to have machine learning on these message conversations and use machine learning to recommend what saved reply you want to do. So what happens is, you might be able to see this. There's a little suggested picture there. So when the support person is picking what reply to do, there's a suggested tab on the reply, which machine learning has picked out as being the reply that people are most likely to reply to. So then we measure how successful that is. We measure how correct our prediction is, and use that and feed that back into the machine learning calculations for the future. So that's one example of where we use machine learning in the product. And I'll just go back to my tab and I'll show you the architecture of that. So what we have is here, so it's the exact same kind of CI/CD pipeline that we talked about before. The green is the feature. So the way we do this is we have the core machine learning team are able to build a platform. The front end team don't actually need to know anything about machine learning. They just call an API to get the recommendation. So the green here is, the inbox front end is where the user is playing around, and they call the GraphQL at the back end, which is the standard API for the inbox. The inbox code will call our suggested response service. So the suggested response service is the blue box, which is a machine learning API service, or a machine learning service that which we have, which gives the suggested response. If there isn't a suggested response, it's fine. It just gets nothing, and it just goes and gets the normal list of saved replies from the saved reply service. So the suggested response service is only there if we actually have an artifact for that customer, if we've managed to predict what responses are good responses. So anyway, that gets fed up to the inbox. We then record whether the person selects that suggested response or not. And we send an event back onto our Kafka event bus to say whether it was selected or whether it was not selected. And we actually also record if it was edited. So if the response was edited, we also record that. So that goes back into our event bus and goes back into our pipeline as feedback for our training service. Before it goes back to our machine learning training service, what we do is we hydrate the event. So the event, first of all, comes from the front end and says, oh, I picked the suggested reply or I didn't pick it. We then go and hydrate it. So we add a bunch of information like the message content for the message that was being replied. And actually we have conversations. So we group messages into conversations. So we fill up the whole conversation and stick that back onto the event bus and put it into the machine learning raw bucket. So you see the machine learning raw bucket there on the top, an S3 bucket. So that goes in. Now, so this is what we do for all machine learning. We stick it into a raw bucket first. Then the next thing that happens is we have a timed process on a Spark process, which comes and takes everything that's in the raw bucket and processes it. Processes it means converting the data into something that's suitable for a machine learning training service to run on. So what we do in this case actually is we delete any deleted messages, and we delete any data any columns that we put in there that aren't necessary. So we delete everything that's not needed for the machine learning, and then we put it into the machine learning process bucket. So from the process bucket, then we have our training service, which is a SageMaker service, and that will run on the process bucket. I think we do it once a night. We could do it as often as we want, but for now we find that once a night is fine. We go and process all of the information that comes in, and we update our deployment artifacts. So SageMaker produces the deployment artifacts for suggested response service, which is another S3 bucket down there in the loop called Hootsuite deployment artifacts. And that is then available now for our suggested response service. So that's kind of the cycle of how the machine learning works. One of the things that we are able to change is the processor. So we keep the machine learning raw bucket event information in there for as long as we can for compliance reasons and for various different rules. We keep it for as long as we can, so that if we want to change any of the algorithms that we run on machine learning, we can just reprocess it and retrain it based from the machine learning raw bucket. So we're able to do experiments on our machine learning algorithms from the machine learning raw bucket. And that's pretty much how it works. And that kind of model repeats itself for other features that we have in the product. All right, so finally, I just want to talk about what happens next. So as I say, we started off with a small team, and that's been working fine. Actually, last summer, I mean, we purchased a company called Heyday, who are based in Quebec. And they're quite a big company that specializes in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And they have a whole bunch of huge number of data scientists and knowledge in that area. So Heyday is going to merge, or is merging, with Hootsuite now. So things are really going to step up in our machine learning space. And what I presented to you just now was kind of like the phase one, our beginner phase, and we're going to move into phase two, accelerated phase. So that's going to be fun. And the other thing we're also looking at now is commercial off-the-shelf services. So we've been using our own algorithms that we pick up and building that out. But we're also keeping an eye out to see if there's anything available just off the shelf that we can use instead. So that's something to look out for. So that is the story of machine learning at Hootsuite. I hope you found that it was of some interest. And yeah, thanks for listening.
We've got a question from Constantine coming at you there, Andrew. Constantine has asked, how do you write API docs for your front-end team? What web framework are you using for the GraphQL backend?
Docs. Yeah, we're not... we do use some automated doc tools, but actually We're a little bit of a kind of read the code type company at the moment. So even the inbox team there, for example, they would have server side coders calling our APIs, and we would take them down. I think we do generate some docs, but we're not really big into generation of docs. Yeah, sorry about that.